guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Callie, and today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 auto by authors. This is a term that goes around a lot in the book community, and it basically means exactly what it says. Whatever book this author comes out with, I will buy it immediately. Most likely I have it pre-ordered because a lot of the authors that I do really enjoy also have pre-order incentives, which are always a fun time. And because I'm obsessed with everything they put out, I pre-order to get said pre-order incentives. So I have created a list of at least 10 authors who I consider auto by authors, and I actually narrowed it down specifically to authors that I've read more than one of their series or more than one of their books. Not just like one series that I really liked, because I have found that there's a couple of authors where there's one series I really like, but like the rest of their works I hate. So without further ado, and in no particular order, I'm gonna just go through these authors, and I guess I don't know reasons I like them. They're all but one writes fantasy. No, all but two. Two don't write fantasy. I can count. And just maybe a couple of their works. I don't really know. I don't know where this video is going. The first author I'm going to talk about is Victoria Schwab, or V.E. Schwab. She has several series out in all age groups. I think the only series of hers that I haven't read is her middle grade series, which is City of Bones. No, that's wrong. Something to do with City of Ghosts, something about ghosts in Paris. I was intrigued. I have the book, I haven't read it. But I have read V.E. Schwab's, I've read the This Savage Song duet. I have read her Darker Shade of Magic and her Vicious duology, and I have given, I think, 5 stars to almost every single one of her books. I am picking up The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue later this month because I've heard nothing but good things. I think what draws me to Victoria Schwab is she takes fantasy elements and flips them on their head. And I really enjoy every single aspect that she puts into these books. And like, I think the first series that I read by her was the This Savage Song duology, and it's about monsters and music and a post-apocalyptic area, different types of monsters, what it's like to be a monster. We get the monster's point of view. And it's just so beautiful. Her writing is just top-notch, phenomenal, and I love it. So highly, I'm gonna recommend all of these authors, so I'm gonna try not to say that as much. The next author that I have is Alison Weir. Alison Weir is a historian. She basically has her, I think, PhD or master's degree in King Henry VIII Tudor era history. So she writes these books about the wives of Henry VIII, the children of Henry VIII, and Henry VIII himself. And I've always found myself really drawn to that time period. I love the Tudors' reign following Mary Queen of Scots and Queen Elizabeth. That whole era I am obsessed with. And one person who I am particularly drawn to from that era is Anne Boleyn. And that's actually how I found Alison Weir. So I really love all of her stuff. This is actually one of her books that I haven't read, which is The Lady in the Tower. This one follows Anne Boleyn in her days in the Tower before she is beheaded. But her series about each individual queen is so intriguing because she actually puts in so much research into those and makes insightful hypotheses as to what happened in between what we don't know because it wasn't recorded. And instead of following the queens while they were queen, she follows each of these women throughout their entire life. And I find that really interesting because there's not a lot we know about like Anne Boleyn from before she came to court and while she was at the French court. So it's all very, very interesting. And if you are interested at all in the Tudor era, I highly recommend Alison Weir. It's not dry, it is full of intrigue, and it's just, it makes you think about what it was like to actually be these women married to that awful, awful man. The next author should come as no surprise. I don't have the dust jacket on right now because I'm still reading this, and that is J Maas. This is A Court of Silver Flames, which just came out today. I went over my lunch break to go and pick this book up because none of my pre-orders were gonna arrive on time and I wanted to read it. So, J Maas is a very famous fantasy author. She has 3 main series, the Throne of Glass series, the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, and the Crescent City series. Throne of Glass is complete. A Court of Thorns and Roses is kind of complete. All the rest of the books are going to be more spin-offs and not part of... There is a main trilogy, basically, and then these ones will be branching off of that. And Crescent City only has 1 book out. But I found Sarah J Maas from A Court of Thorns and Roses first. I read that entire series in the span of a weekend and became obsessed. So naturally, I read all of her other things, and I believe I ended up picking up the entire Throne of Glass series in October of 18, and I had 2 weeks until Kingdom of Ash came out, and I still had to wait a week. I finished the series that fast. I have so much sympathy for the people who read Empire of Storms right when it came out and had to wait 2 years for Kingdom of Ash. I waited a week, and that was torture. So I can sympathize, but I'm obsessed with Sarah J Maas. I love all of her stuff. I think about her books on a daily basis, just on a daily basis, for several different reasons. And I love Sarah J Maas, and it's a thing. The next author that I have on here is Elizabeth Acevedo. She is a poet who writes most of her stories through verse. I have read 2 out of her 3 books, including The Poet X, which is a fantastic book. And they all center around different problems dealing with race, poverty, and aspects of that in the American life. And I love her poetry. It's so beautiful. Her writing, I read this in 1 sitting. It was so good. And I think the last one that I have to read is Clap When You Land, which I've heard nothing but great things. I've also read With the Fire on High, which is her book in novel format, which was, I think, again, something I just devoured because it was so good and just so interesting. And it felt very relatable. So if you like stuff in verse, if you like those hard-hitting kind of topics, I highly recommend Elizabeth Acevedo. The next author that I have on this is Marissa Meyer. This is part of her series, The Lunar Chronicles, which is how I found her. And I've also read her Renegade series and her newest release, Instant Karma. This is the first instance where an auto-buy author has bit me in the butt. I hated Instant Karma. If you've seen my January wrap-up, I go a little bit more detail into that. But her Lunar Chronicles and Renegade series are so good. The Lunar Chronicles is a futuristic retelling of Cinderella, obviously. It also takes other fairy tales and twists them into a futuristic setting, which are so good. Cress is definitely my favorite out of the entire Lunar Chronicles. And then Renegades is a anti-hero story where basically everyone in the world has powers. And we follow Nova, who is kind of a supervillain. And then we follow Adrian, who's a superhero. And they meet and do things. And it's so good. It's top notch. I love Renegades. It's just a fun time. It is a great enemies to lovers romance. It shows a lot. It humanizes villains. When we think of villains, at least like when I think of villains, I think of Thanos and, you know, the Joker and all these kinds of really bad guys where you never sympathize with the villains. Thanos a little bit, but like I understood where Thanos was coming from. Anyway, with these you actually get inside of the villain's head and you understand where they're coming from, and I loved that perspective that Marissa Meyer was able to give us. So I will continue to buy her books, but Instant Karma, that one hurt me. I was a little sad that I hated it. Next author that I have on this is J Kristoff. For J Kristoff, I've read his dual written series, Illuminate, Aurora Rising, as well as his standalone, the Nevernight series. This is his Lifelike trilogy, which I have not picked up yet. I have also pre-ordered Empire of the Vampire because it sounds super good, and Nevernight was fantastic. J Kristoff writes really good, realistic, morally gray characters, as well as being extremely gory and graphic, and I live for it. He ups the drama scale to the 10th degree, and it's just high stakes all the time, 100% of the time. He knows how to throw a curveball, and he knows how to crush your soul in 1,000,004 different ways. So I'm gonna say highly. I just love J Kristoff's writing. It's intoxicating, and they're always really quick reads. The next author that I have on this list is Holly Black. Holly Black writes really good fae stories, and they're not the kind of fae that Sarah J Maas writes. They're the kind of fae that are told in nightmares, the ones where you don't make a deal with the fae and they'll twist it and make it bad and make it turn on its head and not actually be what you want, and she writes those so well. So this is her standalone, The Darkest Part of the Forest. I also have read her entire Cruel Prince series, and she has another series called the Tithe series, which is the only one of hers that I haven't read yet. But all of her books actually happen within the same world. We just follow different characters throughout them, and I think different timelines. But they're all fantastic, and they're all just filled with hysterical fae nonsense that is just so much fun, and I love it. I cannot get enough of her fae world, and I hope that she just keeps going with it, because she's able to meld our real life with the fae world so seamlessly and transition between them. So well done and fantastic. Next author that I have is the last one that doesn't write fantasy, and that is Riley Sager. I found Riley Sager, I want to say a year or two ago, when I wanted to pick up something completely different. So I picked up his book Final Girls, which is a horror story, and I think that's what mainly Riley Sager writes, at least that's what I've seen. And I have picked up every single horror book he's put out since, and each one has gotten better and better and better. Home Before Dark was one of my favorite books of last year, and if you're looking for a thrill, pick up any of his books. They're all so shocking. They each have their own unique twist. Every single time I'm shocked, and I love it. I live for the horror that he comes out with every summer. I'm living for it. Next, I have Elizabeth Lim. Elizabeth Lim has written the Spin the Dawn duology, as well as a couple of the Twisted Tales books in that really big Disney series. I've read her Mulan one, and I have her Cinderella one coming up very quickly on my TBR. And I really love Mulan. Her Mulan book is what made me fall in love with her and what made me pick up Spin the Dawn. And Spin the Dawn and Unravel the Dusk are so magical and have one of the probably my favorite fantasy couples that I've ever read, and I love them. She has another book coming out later this year called Six Crimson Cranes, and I've read the bits and pieces of the synopsis, and I'm so pumped for it because it sounds amazing. And her worlds are so magical, and she was able to build these perfect atmospheres that suck you into the story, where you almost feel like, oh god, like that, like Harry Potter in the Chamber of Secrets when he goes into Tom's Riddle diary and he's sucked into it and then he's sucked back out when he's like done reading. That's how I feel when I'm reading her stories. I'm just blown away by her writing and the stories that she's able to weave. And the last one on this list is actually an author I've met, and that is Tricia Levenseller. She's written I believe 2 standalones and 1 duology, with another duology coming out later this year. But my favorite by far from her is The Shadows Between Us. She read to us the first chapter of this at her launch for Warrior of the Wild, which is another one of my favorite books. She read us the first chapter, and I immediately knew that I was going to fall in love with this book, and I did. This made my top 20 of 2020 as well. It is such a fantastic villain story. All of her books have these wonderfully crafted universes and these morally gray characters who are able to go on this adventure and solve problems that are deeper than what they think their problems are in such a short span. And her books are just so perfect, and I love them. I love her writing. I will continue to buy her books nonstop. They're so much fun. They're fantastic. They're a wild ride. Plus she writes a ton of standalones, which is fantastic, because then I don't have to wait for more. I'm a little sad that her next book coming out, which I think is Blade of Secrets, which also sounds so good. I think that's a part of a duology, and I'm a little sad that it's not just going to be another one-off Tricia Levenseller book, but you best believe I've already pre-ordered it. It's happened. So those are my top 10 auto-buy authors. I have a couple others, but these are the ones that I've read multiple series or books from. And yeah, so let me know down below in the comments if you have any authors that you immediately buy their books no matter what. I'd love to check out new authors, and I'd love to add to this list. So let me know down below, and give this video a like and hit that subscribe button if you want. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday, and I will see you guys in our next video. Bye!